when you say, what is the thing that you've always wanted to do that you've never done? We don't know because we don't stop to think about it. But when you have a challenger in your life, they will have you doing things and trying things that you never expected. And that's what makes life amazing.
You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
I'm Sarah Box, your host of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, where we are on a mission to help organizations think outside the box, move beyond limiting beliefs, and create profound impact in the lives of others and, importantly, in their own life. And we do this, as you know, by sharing accomplished and inspiring guests who have challenged limiting labels and beliefs to pursue and accomplish personal and professional goals in their own right. And today's guest is no different. We have the privilege of exploring the transformative work of Dr. D, or her real name, Dr. Shenelle DuBose, a leadership consultant, facilitator, and transformation speaker. You know, Dr. D's unique approach disrupts the status quo, and she empowers leaders and high achievers, who most of you on this listening to this podcast identify as, to step into their full potential and create lives of purpose and excellence. Her affiliations, I would say, are extremely impressive and include a roster of institutions like Webster University, Schaumburg District 54, and Discovery Education. And Dr. D is sought after for her ability to inspire change and drive innovation. Just think about this. Listen to her speaking topics. Lean into discomfort, change your life. Stop playing small, start living with purpose. Those resonate deeply. I know they resonate for me because those have been pivotal moments in my time. So today we're going to explore more of her strategies around those topics, but I'm also going to ask her about questions and what is Fab 5. So are you curious yet? Well, let's quit describing her and let's bring her onto the show. Let's officially welcome Dr. Shenelle DuBose to the podcast. Welcome, Shenelle.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
Well, I've been looking forward to speaking with you. I checked you out online like I always do, and then did a little more digging. And then, of course, you provided some information for me to know a little bit more. And so I'd like to ask you to start out with a pivotal moment that took you from the classroom where you were to consultancy. What happened and how were you changed by that?
Well, as you've stated, I'm a high achiever. I like to achieve. I like excellence. I like going after goals, setting big, lofty goals and achieving them. And many of us have been this way all of our lives. And we see people go through what we know as rock bottom moments. That's when you are at the bottom, you need help to get up, you are at your lowest point. But for high achievers, we don't typically get a rock bottom moment. And so one day I was pulling onto my school parking lot, pulled into the parking space. I've done this for 12, 13, 14 years, same routine. I pulled into the parking space, and as I was getting ready to extend my arm to open the door, just out of nowhere, my music was playing, and out of nowhere, the thought hit me. You have to do this exact same thing for the next 12 years. And that mortified me. And that's what I call a rock top moment. So high achievers don't typically have rock bottom moments. We have rock top moments when we realize this is the pinnacle of my life. This is as far as I'll go. This is as much as I'll have. And this is what you are resigned to for the rest of your life. And as I extended my arm, that thought would not leave me. I could not shake it. And I was mortified because in reality, I was miserable, but I didn't want to admit it because at a young age, I said I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be an educator. And it was applauded by people that she's going to be an educator. I went to school. They gave me a roadmap for how to do the thing. So I went and I followed the roadmap. I did what they said, and I became a teacher, and I was amazing at it. But I know that after 5 years of teaching, it was on automation. Like I didn't have to think about anything I needed to do because I had truly mastered the art of teaching. And then I began to just climb the ladder, becoming an instructional coach and then an instructional facilitator and then an assistant principal and then a building principal. And at that time, I was the building leader. And what is the point that you get after that? You either become a superintendent or assistant superintendent. And I didn't want to do that. But I had to own the idea that you have to do this for the next 12 years and you need to be happy about it. But I wasn't happy about it. And so in that moment, I had to decide, is this how you're going to live your life? And that was terrifying because now where is the blueprint? Where are the steps? Who's the person that's going to tell me what it is I need to do? Or do I have to figure this out on my own?
And so what is the question to that? Did you have to figure it out on your own, or did you find someone who had a blueprint to get you going?
The truth of the matter is I really didn't know what I wanted. I knew what I did not want, but I didn't know what I truly wanted because no one had ever really asked us. No one ever really says to you, what do you want? We're as young adults and as young people, we are typically trying to please our parents. We're trying to please other people. We're trying to hold up to what society says. You should get married. You should have kids. You should have this beautiful house with the picket fence. And so all of these ideas are planted into our heads. But when do we really stop to say, well, what do I really want? And so when I came to that moment, I had to think, I know what I don't want. But if anybody said to me, well, what is it that you want? What is it that you want to do? Why are you not happy with what you have? Because trust me when I say, everyone was like, are you crazy? You have a great, cushy, secure job that pays you 6 figures. You know what your schedule is. You've done some amazing work. You've taken a building from the bottom 5% of the state to the 55th percentile of the state. I could literally get a job in any district that I wanted, but I didn't know what it was that I wanted. And so I had to go into a process of it really sent me for a tailspin because someone as accomplished as I am, who's done the things that I've done, you would think that I would have better control over my life and understanding who I am and how I want to exist, but I didn't. And so it sent me down a trail of trying to read things, trying to figure things out, trying to try new activities. And then it essentially boiled down to me making a list of what it was that I wanted. But what I found was I couldn't even make the list of what I wanted. So what I did was, and no one told me how to do this, I made a list of what I didn't want. I said, well, since I can't figure out what I want, what do I not want? And so I said, I don't want people to control my day. I don't want to have to work 5 days a week, 8, 9 hours a day, working on the weekends. I don't want to not be able to pick my kids up from school. I don't want to have to go grocery shopping every Saturday morning. Why can't I go grocery shopping on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m.? I don't want to have to calculate every single dime in the store and shop strictly from a list. I wanted to know what it felt like to throw some items in the cart and not have to go back and redo my budget. So I made this list. I didn't want to have to take vacations July 31st through August 10th of every single year for the previous 10 years, because that's the time that you get to take a vacation, which is also pretty peak season as well. And so I made that list. And then I said, oh, well, maybe if this is what I don't want, maybe I can go on the other side and put what the opposite of that would be. And so that's what I did. And once I did that, and I looked at the side of what I wanted, I wanted time freedom. I wanted to be able to come and go as I please. I wanted to be able to make more money, to be able to do more things. I wanted to be able to vacation multiple times a year, not just one time a year on a specific week. I wanted to meet new people. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to have a greater impact. And when I looked at that list of what I wanted, I had to get real with myself. And I said, the school system can never provide this for me. There is no way even if I became the superintendent of schools, I would not even be able to get 10% of the things on the want side of the list, but I would get a lot more of the things on the do not want side of the list. And that was the reality that I needed to leave the school system and do something different. But I also knew I'm gifted, I'm talented at what it is that I'm doing. So I had to try to figure out a different way of doing things. And then one day I was at my job working, still going through this process, because this process took a little over a year for me to really figure out, what is it that you don't like about the job? Why are you unhappy? What is really happening here? And this lady came in. I had paid her to come to do a presentation for my staff. And she came in and she was in the office talking to me. And she was telling me about her work. And I asked her a couple of questions. And then she went and did her presentation. And I was thinking to myself, I can do that. I would have done that better. I would have changed this, and this. She's not experienced in the school system. She doesn't understand. You can't tell these teachers to do this because there are 3 kids under the table and there's one over here who needs to go to the bathroom. She hasn't incorporated that into her training, and that's why she's losing the staff. And so when she came back in, I started talking to her, and lo and behold, she said, oh no. And I knew what I paid her. I knew what I paid her as the building principal because I signed the invoice. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to help these teachers understand how to implement these programs. And I'm going to help the principals understand how to support the teachers, because that's the disconnect. They're sending people into these buildings that don't have practical experience in the classroom with real kids. Like when you put 25, 30 kids in the classroom, you can't just tell a teacher, oh, just teach them all the same thing. It doesn't work like that. And so I knew from my teaching and leadership experience that I knew how to talk to teachers. I knew how to coach teachers. I knew how to understand the climate and culture of a building. And I said, that's what I'm going to do.
So I want to just point out a couple of things that stood out to me. One is that you stayed curious throughout that time, but also I think folks get to that moment where maybe not as much clarity as you had, like, okay, I'm going to have to be here 12 more years. And I'm assuming you're saying that because that was the first time you could retire, right?
Yes.
You'd have your 25 in at that point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So for folks who don't work in a system, 25 in and out, that's the goal for many, or sometimes it's a little longer. At any point, it took a lot of courage for you to be that honest with yourself. But you also did not assume that you would be able to figure it out like within a week and everything would change. You gave yourself the time and you kept being curious and looking. Because I think some folks can think it's optimistic, not unrealistic always, but it's like, okay, I'm going to make this change today. And then, like you said, it's really easy to write a list of what we don't like because we're much more aware of it. It kind of rubs us the wrong way. So it's kind of like having a pebble in your shoe. You're going, oh, there you are again.
Yep.
But it takes some time and self-reflection to think about, but what do I want? What's the opposite of what I don't want? What might that look like? And so for folks, I encourage you to think about that from the long term. And the long term for you may not be a year. It may be longer than a year. It may be shorter. But I think that's magnificent. So then once you figure that out from when you said, I can do what you do and do it better because I know the system, I know the teachers, the leaders, what they're facing, what happened next?
Well, of course, then fear set in because I was 42. I was 41. I had a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. And then fear set in. And I began to get mortified again, like, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if no one hires me? I'm not going to have a check coming in. I'm going to be homeless. We're going to be washing up at McDonald's. Like the absolute bottom of the pit thoughts came into my head. And the one where I'm going to have to move back in with my mother. Like no one really wants to move back in with their mother at 40 years old. And so all of these thoughts came and it scared me. And what did I do? I re-signed my contract for another year. But we get signs and signals along the way. We're not going to pretend like everything was perfect. For some people, it may be perfect. For us, We were getting a new superintendent in. We were getting a new group of students in. You never know what the group of students you're going to get. I was losing teachers. You have to replace the teachers. You have to go through this hiring process. But it wasn't just the process. Those were signs for me. You know, those were the pebbles, those divine pebbles, because again, I believe in divine downloads. I wasn't thinking about my work. I was quite satisfied, or so I thought. And when that thought came into my head, it wasn't my own. I'm very aware that that was not my own thought. I received a divine download, and then you're supposed to act on it. I didn't act on it. And so then that's when the tension starts. That's when the pressure starts to push you and move you. And then we will do things to avoid doing the thing that we're supposed to do. And so I thought maybe I just need to work harder. Maybe I just need to get more systems in place to make the building run even smoother. And then I'll be able to rest a little bit more. I'll be able to go home early in the evening. Oh, next year will be different. And so I kept telling myself these things. I signed that contract. I knew it was a pit in my stomach. When they brought the contracts, they hand deliver them to you. And they don't tell you we're bringing contracts today. You just see the director of HR and they're just looking for people passing out envelopes. And so when I saw my HR person, I knew it was a pit in my stomach, but it wasn't a pit of you're in trouble. It was a pit of you're making a bad decision. Don't do this. And what did I do? Signed that contract and turned it in. I held on to it for about 5 days because I couldn't shake the feeling that I had. I turned it in because nothing had come through. No one had called for any services. Nothing had happened, like no idea of where income was going to come in. So I signed that contract. We end the school year, and then as administrators, we start back late July 22nd. And on July 22nd, when I showed up to those administrative meetings, all hell broke loose. And it was all on my back. The test scores were horrible. We had people who took jobs who then declined the job, like everything you could think of. We had an influx of international students who we were not prepared for. We didn't have interpreters for them. Really pulled at my heart because I do not like delivering subpar services and giving folks who have already had a hard life, making it even harder for them. So all of these things came crashing down on me. And then the thought just from out of nowhere, because you're not supposed to be here. This should not be your problem. And from that day on July 22nd, I said, I will not sign another contract. This is my last year. And so I began to say things like, this is my last first day. This is my last parent teacher conference. This is my last. So I was cementing it in that this is it. It's over with. This is done. And so you get these signals and these signs along the way. And when you get those gut feelings and that intuition, we have to follow it. And so I had to say to myself, okay, you're miserable. You're getting up. You're going to work every day. You're working yourself to the bone. It's not moving you any further in life. It's not getting you any extra pay. It's not getting you any extra freedom. So what's the point? And so that's when I understood that it's not about working harder, because I've worked hard all of my life. I'm one of the hardest working people you'll ever meet. And if I can't be happy and satisfied with all of the hard work that I do, and then I would see other people who maybe I went to school with, maybe I went to college with, not even working as hard as I was, but they were enjoying their life. Like when I would talk to them, they would have hobbies and activities and, oh, girl, I'm going dancing tonight. And I'd be like, how you going dancing tonight? And I'm trying to prepare for work tomorrow. I'm going camping. We're going fishing. We're going on our family vacation. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm clearly doing something wrong here, because here I am dedicating my life to service, dedicating my life to the students and the families and the community that I serve, wanting to make everything better, but I was missing a key ingredient. I wasn't trying to make life better for myself. I was putting the mask on everybody else, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And so I then had to own the fact that you're not coming back. You're turning in the resignation. You're not coming back, and you're just going to figure it out. I said, what I'm doing is already hard. So I'm not afraid of hard. So I may as well go ahead and do this other hard thing.
It's tough when, that's a big moment when we decide we're going to change, regardless of the change. And it's natural to think about all the terrible things that could happen and then take a step backwards. But, you're so right about that gut feeling. And when we ignore it, and I only want 2 knocks on that door. Like if I'm a little, maybe I shouldn't do that, right? The second one is like, girl, I'm telling you right now, listen up, because the next knock is going to be harder.
Yeah, the next one is the brick that's going to hurt.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, and I always remember my dad saying, I only tell you these things so you don't have to have the same mistakes I did. And I didn't appreciate that so much. But now I tell myself, you are getting some inspiration. You're getting a download. Would you listen? Because if you don't listen, the next one's going to knock you on your keister. Yeah. And you're going to be thinking, okay, I give. I'm going to do what's necessary here. And it's so normal for us to tell ourselves scary bedtime stories about how bad things are going to be. And we forget what we've accomplished, And like you said, you're not afraid of working hard. You've done it your whole life.
Right.
And so you're thinking, especially once you make it past up to a certain age, you're going, okay, if I've made it this long, I've overcome some things. I've just forgotten them because I take them for granted.
Yes.
I'm thinking you've got 3 kids. You've already overcome some stuff. You've been managing a family and teaching and succeeding. So, but I say that not because you need to know it so much, but to remind myself and our listeners too, that it's normal for us to downplay what we can do. But man, that gut-wrenching pain of when we ignore what we know, what we should do and then you're looking around and you're thinking, okay, it's possible I'm the only one who hasn't gotten the message. Which doesn't mean working in the school system's terrible. It's just not good for everybody.
Exactly.
And maybe not for your entire life, because obviously you changed a lot of lives while you were there.
Yeah. But that's also the message that we're told to get the job, stay there for 30 years and retire. I never heard a different message. I never even knew anyone who quit their job. Like in the world that I live in, you go to work, you work, and you stay there for 30 years and you retire. That's the message. And so what do you do when you're in year 12, year 14, year 17, and you don't want to be there anymore? And there's nobody around you saying, well, just go do something different. Nobody's saying that. Even now, when I tell people, you have a right to change your mind. You actually achieved the goal that you set out. You wanted to be a teacher. You achieved that. And now it's okay to do something different. And so we have to have those people around us.
So let's talk about those people around us, because that's what you do now for other people. You are the people around them in a sense. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about what you do, how you help people, and specifically some of the things that you've been most gratified about. So not necessarily systems change, but people changes.
So now I help other educators who are in the system, because some of us are meant to be lifelongers. You're meant to stay there 30, 40 years, make a tremendous impact. But then there are others of us who are really, really great at what it is that we do, because there's this theory that the people who leave the school system were not good at what they do. Many of those people were great at what they do, but the monotony of it is just too much. There's another calling, a different way that we can serve. And so for those people, I help them to understand you don't have to keep doing something that no longer brings you joy. It's okay for you to evolve. It's okay for you to go through a change and decide, I want to do something different. I want to try something new. That's very difficult for educators, because think about us. We've been in the system, many of us, since we were 5 years old. And when we say a system, just like marriage is an institution, the penal system is an institution, education is an institution. And they teach us a certain way to think, a certain way to be, and a certain way to believe. So the education system teaches us about lack. Everything is built on lack. There's not enough of this. There's not enough of that. We have to do 5 roles in one paycheck. We have to show up. We have to give to the kids. If you don't stay over late, you're not a good teacher. Everybody wants to be a good teacher. If you're a good teacher, you'll do it for your kids. So we're sent all of these subliminal messages that we download and take into our system. And so it sounds really easy to say, just leave. No, because then you're a horrible person. You're a horrible teacher. You're just going to leave your kids like that. You're just going to leave them high and dry. And they make us really believe that the school system cannot exist without what we're contributing. But we know that's not true, because if we do something wrong, we can get fired immediately. So there is a mix of messaging. And once I realized why it was so hard for me to leave, and for me, I'm very strong. I have strong opinions. I am very strong-willed. So it's not like I'm just easily convinced to do things. I'm a very logical thinker, a strategizer, really, really good at a number of things. So for me to realize you have been trained and systemized to believe these things that just are not true, or I needed to understand that two truths can exist at the same time. I can love my job and no longer want to do that job. And so as I was, figuring out my life, what I realized was, I didn't have a lot of people around me who could help me in this next stage. And even as I began to elevate in my business and do different things, I noticed that there were gaps. Like we typically have our high school friend or our college friend that we've been friends with for many years. We typically have our spouse or significant other who we talk to. We'll have our siblings who we talk to, but we don't typically have this big network as high achievers that we depend on, but a lot of people depend on us. So as I'm building and doing the work on myself to figure out how can you serve from your highest level, how can you just be the best version of yourself, the thing that I realized when I looked at my phone, it was calls coming in to me of people, let me run this by you. Let me pick your brain. Let me ask you this question. What do you think about this? But when I ran into a problem, I didn't have anybody to call because I was the answer for everybody else. And so I began to think about that. And I was like, I need someone who I can talk to. The person was my mom. Well, I was trying to get advice from my mom, who stopped working after her fourth. I was the youngest. So she stopped working when she had me, and she hadn't been back into the workforce. But I was trying to talk to my mom about business decisions, about building a business, about the money that you have to spend. And of course, she wants you to be safe and secure. So she can't give you advice on how to move forward. I'm talking to my best friend. We've been friends since we were 5 years old. She's a teacher also. And so she's saying, well, you can always go back to the school system because it's a lot of schools. I can tell my administrator, they would love to have you over here. And it's like, I'm missing something here. And then I began to think, well, if they're calling me, who do I get to call? And so then I started to pay attention to other highly successful people. I started to go to conferences and to events, not really knowing exactly what I was going for, but I was just hoping for some inspiration because I always get inspired at different events and conferences that are organized and focused. And so as I began to network with these women, they would talk to me about these people that they have in their lives. And I was like, I don't have those people in my life. And I began to compile a list, and I called them my Fab Five. And again, it's based off of what we see in the school system. In the school system, we have a board of education, or what you would call your board of directors, sort of. And so on that board, you don't want educators. Like, those are not the people you want on that board. If you have one educator, that's enough. But you don't want 5 educators. You want an attorney. You want someone who's good at finance. You want someone who's good at fundraising. You want someone who understands education. Then you want a parent who understands the kid's perspective. And I thought about that, and I was like, why don't we have a board of education for our lives? Why don't we have a board of directors for our lives who can give us these various viewpoints? And so I said, okay, so I need someone who I can talk to without judgment. who's going to give me a kind word, because really as high achievers, we're hard enough on ourselves. Everything that you're going to say, I've already said it to myself 5 times, and I've scolded myself. I've yelled at myself. I don't need you to do that for me because I already took care of that part. So I need someone who is just going to provide solace during tough times. They're going to listen without judgment. They're going to be like that shoulder to lean on. And they're a safe space. And that's what I call my comforter. Those are people who will comfort you. This is a role that you need people in where when you call them, they understand I'm calling you to vent, to share something with you. I don't need you to judge me. Yeah, I may be wrong. I may be dead wrong, but I'm not calling to be judged. I'm calling for this safe space. And then we need what I call a confronter. These are the people who are going to give you the hard truths. In my life, this was my mom. My mom would give me the hard truth. She would point out blind spots that I didn't pay attention to. And she would hold me accountable. You said you were going to do this. Here we are a month later and you still haven't done it. Why are you lying to yourself? And then they push you to be better. Well, when my mom died, my mom passed in 2018, and I realized, oh my goodness, 6 months went by. I didn't make any progress. I did nothing significant. I did nothing to move my life forward. I was simply existing because my confronter, my person who would say, okay, you need rest, but you've been resting for 4 days now. Let's get up and go do something. I didn't have that person. And when that person left, my life took a significant decline. And so I said, I got to replace the role that my mom played in my life. And so those are your confronters. And then you need a counselor. This is a person who offers wisdom and advice. It's important that they walk the path before you. So a lot of people will try to have someone as their counselor who's never done the thing that they're trying to do or who has no experience in what it is that you're talking about. So how can they provide insights and share experiences and help you through these complex decisions that you have to make? When we were getting ready to buy our first home and our second home and our third home, we needed to talk to people who had gone through the process. After the first time, we knew the process, but now we're buying more costly homes. We need to know about jumbo mortgages and all of these things. And so you can't go talk to someone who lives in an apartment about this because they don't know the process. They can't give you wisdom and guide you through it. So you need number 3 role is a counselor. And then the 4th role is a challenger, which is different from a confronter. So a confronter is going to point out your blind spots. They're going to tell you the hard truths and they're going to push you to do better. But the challenger is going to help you have an amazingly marvelous, adventurous life. They're going to push you outside of your comfort zone. They are going to encourage you to take risks. They're going to get you to try new things and they're going to have you stretch your limits. And this person should typically believe in you more than you believe in yourself. A lot of us don't have this person. If you ask yourself, when was the last time I took a really big risk? And what was it? Most of us don't know because we don't take risks. We play it safe. When you say, what is the thing that you've always wanted to do that you've never done? We don't know because we don't stop to think about it. But when you have a challenger in your life, they will have you doing things and trying things that you never expected. And that's what makes life amazing, that you get to have fun, adventure, and it's what I call wild adventures that I would never do on my own. And then that 5th role is a celebrator. That's someone who's going to celebrate every win, big or small. We as high achievers, we do not stop to celebrate. I will have done all types of things and I will talk about it like it's just a regular part of the day. Even when I transformed my building, I was like, oh yeah, we made it to the 50th percentile. It was on the news. That was good. Now next year, I need to make it to the 62nd percentile and move on in my day. And this is daily life for me. And so I have a celebrator that she always celebrates. Anything that I say, she'll say, stop, Shenelle, stop. Did you hear what you just said? Did you hear that? No, let's stop. We're going to brunch. We're going to have a celebration. Let's do a happy dance. And she makes me stop to celebrate. And even with your big wins, my 50th birthday, she was like, no, this is a milestone. We're celebrating. I'm coming up on my 25th wedding anniversary. She was like, what are you doing? What's going to happen? No, go big or go home. But she makes me think about what it is I need to do to celebrate myself instead of sitting back waiting on other people to celebrate me. She's never asking me, do you want me to celebrate you? She's like, no, what are you doing to celebrate you? What are you going to get yourself? What experience are you going to provide? So she's like my personal cheerleader, and she reminds me of how far I've come. And so those 5 roles are essential if we want to have a life full of adventure and thrive the way that we want to. But what I find is that, and this was true for me as well, I wanted one person to have all of those roles. I wanted my husband, he needed to celebrate me. He needed to challenge me. He needed to be my counselor. I had my mom for my confronter. And then I had my friend who would sometimes comfort me, but that wasn't really her good role. And then my husband was my comforter. That's a lot for one person or 2 people to bear. And then what happens when life transitions happen? People divorce, people die, people move, work situations change. And when that happens, it leaves you feeling like you've been abandoned, like you have no one. And so having people in your life and helping them to understand how they can support you, it changes everything.
So let me ask you, first, let me thank you, because those 5 roles are so critical. And you're right. You know, we can make ourselves feel bad because that one person hasn't done what we expect of them. And oftentimes it's because we won't do it for ourselves, right? So it's like, right. I'd rather project that job on you. And how great to have your celebrator friend who makes you, oh, hold on a minute. We're doing more here. That's not good. What are you going to do? But when those folks are gone, whether it's from death or some other life change, what do you see happening? Do people replace those roles? Or, you know, Dr. D, what is going on? Are we better off or worse off? And
right. So we have to get into a space where we understand that these are relationships and not friendships. A lot of times women like to classify everything as a friendship. And everyone doesn't need the full view of your life. They don't have to know all about your husband, your kids, everything that you're challenged with. And so we have to begin to think of these as relationships. And some of them can be paid. For the people who don't have these things or these roles in your life, you may have to pay for some of these. You may have to pay for a mentor to provide that guidance that you need as your challenger. You might have to, or as your counselor, you might have a therapist who you pay to help you to walk through some of the trauma and some of the concerns that you have and to push you to do better. So some of them are paid. Some of them are, it might be your pastor or an older couple at your church or something. And it may just be a neighbor. You know, you might have a neighbor who's really good in a certain area. So you have to have these relationships, but the relationships most times are already there. You're just not utilizing them in that capacity. These are not necessarily people that we talk to on a daily basis. And then some of them you're going to have to go out and create, because as you evolve and change and elevate yourself, you need to get into circles of people who are doing more than you are. So I find these people at conferences, at events, in Facebook groups. We are in the world of Zoom, so you can be where you're at. I'm where I am. I have an accountability partner who lives in Denver. We talk one time every month, and we've been doing this for 4 years. We've never met in person, and I feel like she's a really solid relationship. If I don't talk to Sage during the month, I'm like, let me reach out to Sage. And we talk 1 hour every month. It's scheduled, and you have to treat it appropriately so that you can nurture the relationships, especially if it's not someone who's fully in your circle. I have another group that I meet with around finances. And again, it's not my strongest suit. And so they hold me accountable, but we get to learn about each other. We get to travel together. We get to explore new opportunities. They introduce me to new ideas. I have another person who challenges me to get out of my comfort zone. I am a creature of habit. And so she will say, well, what have you tried new lately? She recently sent me a thing and said, why don't you read Tabitha Brown's I Did a New Thing? Because something as simple as taking a different route from work, driving a different way. I drove the same way to work for 15 years. I kid you not. I never took a different route. Were there different routes to take? Absolutely. I never took a different route. And so, having those people in your life, but if you don't have that communication with them to reach out to say, hey, I'm trying a new thing. I want to make sure that I'm living up to my full potential. You're really good at celebrating. Would you hold me accountable and help me to celebrate when I call you and I'm telling you about some of the things that I'm doing? Can you remind me to celebrate? When I called my confronter, I told her, my mom, which was her sister, I said, you all are very similar. And mom used to push me and give me my blind spots when I'm telling her stories and things that have happened. Would you be that person for me? I don't talk to my aunt every week, but when I call her, she understands that this is our relationship. And then as I go out and meet new people, I have to nurture the relationship first before I can figure out if you can serve on my board of directors. And I also have to be willing to give something back in return. And so I don't want to, everybody knows what their capacity is. Some people are social butterflies and they can nurture 30 relationships at one time. That is certainly not me. That is not me. When I go to an event, I look to make 3 high quality connections. Out of those 3 high quality connections, one of them may pan out to be a long-term connection. The other 2, we will continue to be mutual, but some type of way the relationship died off. But knowing what you're capable of and then understanding what it is that you need and actually going to find it, not just sitting and hoping and praying. I tell people all the time, hope is not a strategy and prayer is only half of a strategy. Prayer without works is dead and hope is definitely not a strategy. So we have to get up. We have to do something. If you say you want to build connection, go out. We can't build connection at home most times. People operate off of facial recognition and energy. When people feel your energy, they know whether or not you will be good for them, whether or not you all are aligned. But on Zoom, you get a portion of that, but not the full thing. And so there are a lot of ways to build the connections. But the first step is to look through your phone. And what are the things that are depleting you? Because a lot of times we're giving, and the other person, it's a one-sided relationship. So what are you going to do about that? You can't build the connections that you need because you're too busy giving to a one-sided relationship that does not serve you.
Yeah, and those are hard because sometimes, again, like you were describing leaving the school system, how guilty you can be made to feel because you are the lifeblood for those students. Same thing when you're leaving a one-sided relationship or changing the one-sided relationship, it can feel bad.
Right. And
it's just a feeling.
It is. And I tell people, you need to say no to them to say yes to yourself. And we're so used to saying no to ourselves that we will say yes to other people. Anytime I tell someone I'm going to have to say no to you in order to say yes to myself, if they give me any ounce of resistance, the relationship is over. Because when I tell you that you should care more about me, when I say I need to say yes to myself, you're essentially saying, no, I'm more important than you. So you need to say yes to me. The negotiation ends at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice role model to set for people. It's okay. I'm not mad at you. I just have to decline because I need to take care of myself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it won't be forever. It might be. It depends on the person. But yeah, that's really, that's so wise. I really hope people listen to this episode more than once because you just keep saying things that are, as you point out about your celebration person, you point out key things and they roll off your tongue as like, yeah, of course, everybody knows this. So come back and listen to this podcast, you guys, because listen for Shenelle's and then things, because there's all these little nuggets in there that are going to really help you go, oh, okay, let me think about that. Let me do something about that. I have one more pivot I want to ask you to make, and it's into if you're willing, but it goes in a direction that I'm super interested in. And when I see people indicate they may be interested in as well, I want to pull on that thread. So in some pre-interview information you shared with me is that because of how you asked questions, you were in Oprah magazine more than once. So my question around that is about, did you use questions as a strategy to get into the magazine, or were you seeking the question because you just needed the answer? And I know it's a very different, small distinction, because then I want to know how you think about questions.
Okay, so I've always loved Oprah. I've been watching Oprah since I was 15. I go to all of her Live Your Best Life events. And when they said they were pitching this contest, I said I was going to enter. And it had all of these criteria for entering and how you ask the question. So I asked one single question. Everybody else gave a intro and a lead up to the question and background information. I did not, because I think that clouds the water, and it also leads people to answer the way you want them to answer. So my question was, what is your greatest fear? No one had ever asked her that question.
Really?
Yes.
Because she talks about that.
Yes, she does. But no one had ever just that question, nothing else.
Whoa.
And it led her to have to stop. So the way the lady explained it to me, so they call you on the phone. Folks, the Oprah people actually call you on the phone. I thought it was a prank phone call. And so I answered the phone, and she said whatever her name is from the Oprah Winfrey Show. And I started laughing because my sisters and everybody knows that I love Oprah. And I was like, why are they playing on my phone? And she was like, okay, this is really the Oprah Show. And you entered a question, and Oprah loved your question. And I was driving. I had to pull over to the side of the road because I was about to have a heart attack immediately. And I was like,
I feel it even just in the telling of the story. I can feel my adrenaline going up. I'm going, oh my God, it's not a joke.
So I pulled over to the side of the road, and she said, Oprah loved your question. She said you sent one single question, no additional details, and it made her really have to stop and think, what is her greatest fear? Not just what is a fear or what are you fearful of, but what is your greatest fear? And she said, Oprah would love to answer that question for you. We're going to enter you for round 2 of the contest. And so I went on. So I got in the book the first month, and she went through the answering of the question. And then for the second month, she explained why we made it to the finalists. So I didn't win the final contest, but when the lady called me back to tell me that you made it to the next round, and she said, and Oprah was she loved that you go straight in. You don't try to get people to sway to what it is you're wanting them to say. And she said she's really been thinking about that greatest fear, and now she's determined to conquer that fear. Because a lot of people would thought that her fear would be around weight or something like that. But it's really of not being enough, not doing enough, not serving enough. And for a lot of us, that's our fear. And I don't know what made me ask that question. It was just a point of curiosity for me. I just wanted to know, I wonder what is her greatest fear? Fear plays such a big role in our lives, and it keeps us from doing so many things. I just wanted to know, I wonder, what is Oprah's greatest fear? Not just any fear, but the biggest one that you have. And I sent that one-line question in, and it got me in the magazine 2 times. And then I was invited to her event, and I'm actually in the book, standing there beside Gail. And my sister was with me, and they cut my sister off. She still fusses about that to this day.
She didn't send the question.
Right.
That's brilliant. But the question's brilliant. And I'm not going to do what I want to do, which is ask you what's your greatest fear. But I do want to know.
You know what? My greatest fear is dying and not having done what I wanted to do. That's my greatest fear. Every day I wake up and I say, what can I die without having done? And I try to do the thing instead of steady putting it off. You know how we say, well, I'm going to wait till I'm 65. Well, I'm going to wait till if the thought comes to my head, if it's a trip, I book it. If it's an experience, I book it. And then I figure the rest out later. So that allows me to, if I'm 80, 90, 100, however years old I will be, when I take my last breath, I want to be able to say, you did all the things you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Dr. D, I have loved listening to you today, and I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Now, I know that you work with people all the time, but share with us the best place for people to find you. We'll put everything you've sent me in the show notes, but what's the place you most are present?
Well, I'm probably most present now on YouTube at Educators Moving On Official. I go on there. I do live streams every weekend. And you'll find about 100 videos on there of me. I'm avid on Facebook. You know, we're over 40, so we're still on Facebook. And I go live on Facebook all the time, just sharing strategy, giving inspiration, and talking about my real life. And of course, I have my website, www.educatorsmovingon.com.
Well, thank you so much. And listeners, please, I'm not joking. Share this episode with some other folks, whether they're educators or not. Anybody who's been in that spot, and I have been in that spot, thinking, you've come so far, you've done so much, what's wrong, right? And you need to make a pivot. It sometimes can take a while to get off the dime and get going. So please share the episode. Visit Dr. Shenelle DuBose. I keep wanting to say Dubois, and there is no I in your name. And there is an E. So at any rate, please visit her. We'll put all the links in the show notes. As you can see, she has great energy, great wisdom, and she is doing the No Labels, No Limits life. So we can all learn from her. Thank you so much, Dr. D.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic business coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. Please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Till next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.